imagine a winter so brutal? Even trained soldiers feared stepping into the snow. December 1944. The forests of Belgium and Luxembourg stand silent, frozen, waiting. No one knows that within hours, the ground will shake with the biggest German attack the Western Front has ever seen. The Battle of the Bulge did not begin with thunder. It began with silence. A silence so deep that American troops thought the war was slowing down. Snow covered everything like a white blanket, hiding the truth. Germany was preparing its final desperate gamble. In the early hours of December 16th, German forces, nearly 200,000 men, thousands of tanks, and artillery, launched a massive surprise attack through the Ardennes. Thick fog rolled over the forests, grounding Allied aircraft. The Luftwaffe flew low under cloud cover, and German panzers pushed through the ice-covered roads like steel ghosts emerging from the trees. American troops were scattered, exhausted, and completely unprepared. Many believed the war was almost over, but Hitler had chosen this moment to strike, hoping to split the American and British armies, capture the port of Antwerp, and force the Allies into negotiating peace. If Germany succeeded, the war could drag on for years. The first American units hit were young, inexperienced, and poorly supplied. Some had never even seen combat before. They were stretched thin across a 90-mile front, an impossible distance to defend. German paratroopers disguised as American soldiers infiltrated roads, changed signposts, and spread confusion everywhere. But even in the chaos, something unexpected happened. Instead of retreating in panic, small groups of American soldiers formed pockets of resistance. They fought from farmhouses, from broken trenches, from behind frozen trees. Sometimes only 30 men held off entire German battalions. In towns like Elsenborn, Eindhoven, and Bastogne, American units refused to collapse. They knew they were surrounded. They knew ammunition was running low. They knew reinforcements were far away. But surrender was not an option. As the German spearheads pushed deeper into Allied territory, the bulge on the map grew wider, and so did the cost of every minute. Every hour the Americans held delayed the German timetable. Every frozen night stretched the limits of human endurance, and the German advance, though powerful, was burning precious fuel faster than they could replace it. The stage was set for one of the most heroic stands in American military history, and the world had no idea what was coming next. By December 19, 1944, the German advance looked unstoppable. Columns of panzers rolled through the frozen Ardennes, pushing deeper into Allied lines. Roads were choked with snow, shattered vehicles, and desperate civilians fleeing the chaos. Every village echoed with distant artillery. Every forest felt alive with danger. Yet in the middle of this growing storm stood a handful of American units who refused to give an inch. The most famous of them all, the 101st Airborne Division. Thrown into the battle with almost no winter clothing, low ammunition, and barely any medical supplies, they rushed to defend a small Belgium town that would soon become legendary, Bastogne. Whoever controlled Bastogne controlled the roads, and whoever controlled the roads controlled the entire battle. As the 101st dug in, German forces surrounded the town from all sides. Tanks blocked every exit, artillery rained down day and night. Snow filled the trenches, freezing boots and fingers until men could barely hold their rifles. Medical tents overflowed with wounded soldiers wrapped in blankets instead of bandages. But even trapped, the Americans refused to panic. Every soldier knew one thing: if Bastogne fell, the German plan might succeed. On December 22nd, German officers approached the American lines under a white flag. Their message was simple: surrender or be destroyed. The American commander, General Anthony McAuliffe, read the demand and laughed. His legendary reply contained just one word: nuts. The message spread through the foxholes like fire. The men of Bastogne, starving, freezing, exhausted, felt a spark of pride. They might die here, but they would not surrender. The Germans were stunned. They expected fear. Instead, they got defiance. As the siege tightened, the situation grew desperate. Food rations shrank to almost nothing. Some soldiers boiled snow just to stay hydrated. Ammunition was counted bullet by bullet. Fog trapped Allied aircraft on the ground, preventing supply drops. The Germans knew the Americans were running out of everything, but still the defenders held. Meanwhile, General Patton was racing north with his Third Army in one of the most remarkable maneuvers of the war. He turned his entire army 90 degrees in a single day, pushing through ice-covered roads under constant German fire. His goal was simple: break the siege before Bastogne collapsed. Each passing day felt like a lifetime. Every man in the town knew the Germans were throwing their last strength at them. The roar of Tiger tanks shook the ground. Snowstorms turned the landscape white, hiding friend and foe alike. Nights were lit by artillery flashes. Days were filled with smoke, fear, and stubborn courage. But despite everything, Bastogne still stood, and as Christmas approached, the fog began to lift. For the first time in days, the rumble in the sky wasn't German planes. It was hope. December 23, 1944. Dawn broke with a sky clearer than anyone in Bastogne had seen in a week. For days, the fog had trapped the defenders in isolation, but now sunlight cut through the smoke-filled air. The soldiers of the 101st Airborne looked up and heard the sound they had been praying for. American aircraft, transport planes swept across the forest, dropping crates of ammunition, food, medical supplies, and winter gear. Parachutes opened like flowers over the snow. Men who had been freezing and starving only hours earlier now felt life returned to the fight. Machine gunners were handed belts of ammo. Medics tore open new bandages. Morale surged. Bastogne was still surrounded, but no longer alone. On the German side, panic began to grow. Their surprise attack had relied on speed, fuel, and fear, and now all three were slipping away. Fuel shortages crippled their panzers. Roads were clogged with wreckage. Units became scattered and confused. Worst of all, the Allies finally understood the scale of the offensive and were moving to crush it from all sides. Inside Bastogne, the Americans braced for the biggest assault yet. Tanks rolled toward the outskirts of the town. Infantry advanced through the snow. Artillery thundered without pause. The ground shook as German forces attempted to break the defenses once and for all. But the defenders were different now. They had ammunition, they had supplies, and they had hope. From foxholes and broken walls, American riflemen fired with renewed strength. Anti-tank crews destroyed panzers at point-blank range. Paratroopers held intersections, refusing to fall back even as buildings collapsed around them. Every street became a battleground. Every yard of snow was paid for in blood. Meanwhile, Patton's Third Army was pushing closer. His tanks fought through blown bridges, icy roads, and German ambushes. The closer they got, the more fiercely the Germans tried to stop them. But Patton had promised, "We're coming to relieve Bastogne," and nothing, not weather, not exhaustion, not enemy fire, would stop his advance. On December 26, the men of Bastogne heard a distant rumble. Not artillery, not tanks firing, but engines. American tanks. Patton's lead elements smashed through the German lines and entered Bastogne from the south. Soldiers who had been surrounded for days cheered through frozen lips, waving from foxholes and rooftops. The siege was broken, but the Battle of the Bulge was far from over. Germany launched more attacks across the Ardennes, hoping to regain momentum. Yet their strength was fading. The weather that once helped them now turned against them. Allied air power returned in full force, bombing convoys, destroying tanks, and severing supply lines. The German offensive, once terrifying, began to collapse. By mid-January 1945, the Allies had pushed Germany back to where the attack began. Tens of thousands had died. Forests were filled with wreckage. Entire towns had been reduced to January 1945. The forests of the Ardennes were silent again, but the scars of the Battle of the Bulge remained everywhere. Trees sheared in half by artillery, tanks frozen in place like iron skeletons, and entire villages reduced to blackened stone. For the men who fought there, the landscape felt less like Europe and more like the edge of the world. As the smoke cleared, Allied commanders finally understood the scale of what Germany had attempted. Hitler had thrown 500,000 soldiers, thousands of tanks, and his final reserves of fuel into this desperate gamble. If the offensive had succeeded, it could have split the Allied armies, captured Antwerp, and forced a negotiated peace. It might even have prolonged the war by months or years. But it hadn't succeeded. Instead, the battle revealed the beginning of the end for the German war machine. Their armored divisions were shattered. Their best troops were gone. Their fuel stores were empty. And their last chance at turning the war around had died in the snow. In contrast, American forces, though battered, emerged stronger than ever. The 101st Airborne, once surrounded and freezing, became symbols of courage. Tank battalions that fought road by road learned the brutal truth of winter warfare. Medics who treated the wounded under shell fire became legends. Every soldier, no matter his rank or role, carried a piece of the Ardennes with him forever. As January continued, Allied forces launched a massive counterattack, pushing the Germans back across the Rhine. Town by town, the front moved eastward. The same soldiers who had defended Bastogne now marched forward with confidence. They knew that the hardest blow Germany could deliver had failed. The momentum of the war had shifted permanently, but even in victory, the human cost remained impossible to ignore. Thousands of young men never returned home. Families across America and Germany waited for letters that would never arrive. Survivors spoke of frostbite, hunger, exhaustion, and fear, but also of loyalty, brotherhood, and the belief that their stand had truly mattered. By mid-February 1945, the Battle of the Bulge was officially declared over. The Allied lines were restored, and Germany was retreating on every front. Newspapers across the world called it Hitler's last gasp. Yet for those who survived, it was more than a military victory. It was a test of spirit, endurance, and sacrifice. The battle proved that war is not only won by weapons, but by the determination of ordinary people facing impossible odds. In the frozen darkness of the Ardennes, when surrounded by tanks and artillery, American soldiers chose to stand and fight. Their defiance delayed the German advance, protected countless civilians, and ultimately helped open the path toward final victory. Just 4 months later, in May 1945, Germany surrendered. Europe celebrated, and many historians would look back and say, if the Allies had broken at the Bulge,